This is Lorenzo, and this is the Training Routines Taxonomy video series, lesson number 19. It's on the 15th routine, the second last in the series. It is the press complex, which is a weightlifting routine focused on helping you develop maximal pressing strength in the overhead dimension. It's been designed to help you achieve your 1 repetition maximum benchmark for the overhead press. We're going to do so using the MSP exercise protocol framework. Again, only 5 exercises. Let's take a look. The press complex is the 6th of 7 upper body routines and the 3rd of 4 press vector routines. Speaking of routines, to the left of our matrix, we can see the routine type that we're dealing with is a complex, specifically a weightlifting complex. And as I mentioned, it is designed to help you develop a maximal overhead strength or pressing strength with a vertical vector. And together with the invert track, focusing on the anterior delts, upper pecs, as well as the triceps. The press complex has been designed to help you master one of the body's 9 dimensional skills, namely overhead strength. Now we know an exercise protocol is only as good as its training plan with clearly stated objectives, strategies, and tactics. So let's take a look at that now. The press complex has been designed to help you achieve your 1 repetition maximum benchmark for the overhead press, which is a benchmark of dynamic bent arm pressing strength. Your goal as a male is to press at least 80% of your weight overhead one time, and for the females to be able to press half your body weight overhead at least for 1 repetition. So for example, if you were a 75 kilogram male, your goal is to lift at least 60 kilograms overhead for 1 repetition with good form. For the females, assuming you weighed 60 kilograms, for example, your goal is to lift at least 30 kilograms overhead for 1 repetition with good form. As for our strategy, or the minimum mobility and stability and strength requirements for safe, efficient, and effective overhead presses, we will need shoulder flexion mobility, scapular elevation stability, both in a bent arm and straight arm position. And finally, we will need elbow extension strength and shoulder flexion strength. As for our tactics, or the ideal training environment and equipment we will need to implement our strategy, we will need an open training zone for our mobility and stability work. We will need a weight training zone for our strength pressing work. And for most people, that would mean access to a gym, which means you will need a squat rack, barbells, and plates. Okay, so with our objective and our strategy in mind, we now know what we're trying to do and our tactics in place. We're finally ready to see what the MSP exercise protocol framework looks like as it applies to the press complex. So for our first 2 exercises in the mobility category, serving as our warm-up, we have for our first exercise the closed hip supine trap, which we saw in the racetrack. And then for our second exercise, we have a straight arm seated flexion. For our third exercise in the stability category, following the 60-second rule, we have the straight body McGill Big 3, which we saw in the squat as well as the lift complex. For our fourth exercise, we have the straight arm press hold. And for our fifth and final exercise in the strength category, following the 30 rep rule, is going to be the overhead press itself, focused on achieving our benchmark, as well as 2 very convenient beginner progressions. We start our routine with the supine trap, also known as the plow pose. It is an upper trapezius stretch, so we want to mobilize those shoulders before we get into our pressing work. You can see it demonstrated over here. Start by bringing your legs overhead till you feel a mild stretch in the upper back and the neck. You can do so with your legs bent, straight, move them around, do whatever you need to really open up the muscles at the back here. I like to floss by moving my legs back and forth as you see there. Hold this position for at least 3 minutes. Once we're done with our supine trap, we move on to the second exercise, the seated flexion, as we see it performed over here. As the name suggests, start in a seated position, grab a weighted dowel, grip it in an overhead squat position, keeping the elbows completely locked. You will elevate the scapula, so press upwards. Imagine you're pushing your shoulders into your ears. You will then lean forward until you have external rotation of the shoulder and elevated scapula, which is a 4-second flexion, which you'll do for 15 reps, lasting 1 minute. Alternatively, and another stretch that I like instead of the seated flexion as your second exercise is the butcher's block, which we saw in the cycle complex, as well as the pull track, which we will hold for 2 minutes before moving on to the third exercise. Together, the supine-trap and seated flexion, or the butcher's block, lasting no longer than 5 minutes, will help us to fulfill the minimum shoulder flexion mobility requirements we need for more efficient overhead presses. Moving on to our stability complex and the third exercise in our routine, we have the McGill Big 3, which we saw before. The McGill Big 3 is a 3-in-1 core stability complex. The McGill Big 3 consists of the modified curl up, the side plank, as well as the bird dog. Because each position is a unilateral static hold, there are at least 6 positions. So we recommend you do 30 seconds for each position, which will last a total of 3 minutes. Again, for those of you seeking a precise follow along protocol for the McGill Big 3, simply YouTube McGill Big 3. You'll see many videos that you can follow along with. Alternatively, download the training routines taxonomy PDF. I'll have a link to a video with one of the best performed McGill Big 3 protocols. So go and check that out. Once we're done with the McGill Big 3, we will move on to the weightlifting platform, where we will implement our fourth exercise, the straight arm press hold, as we see it performed over here. As the name suggests, the press hold is a static overhead press position that you want to hold for at least 60 seconds. In terms of weight, we recommend roughly 50% of your 1 repetition maximum target. So for the guys, if your target is roughly 70 to 80 kilograms, we recommend that you hold this position for 1 minute with 40 kilograms. And for the girls, most women will be aiming for roughly a 30 to 40 kilogram overhead 1 repetition maximum press. So we recommend a 15 kilogram bar to hold this position for 60 seconds. For the beginners, we recommend starting with 3 sets of 20-second holds. And then as you get more comfortable with the movement, aim for 2 sets of 30 seconds and eventually try to do 60 seconds in one go. Together, the McGill Big 3 and the press hold serves as our stability complex, which shouldn't take us longer than 10 minutes to complete, which helps us to fulfill the minimum core stability as well as the scapular elevation stability requirements that we need for safer overhead presses. Okay, so now that we're done with our mobility and stability preparatory work, we practice them in isolation. We now want to integrate them into our functional movement target, which is the overhead press itself. And we'll do so according to the 30 rep rule. It's important that we first master and become consistent in the mechanics of the overhead press before we start adding more intensity or load to the bar. Assuming you're a proficient with the overhead press, your goal now is to do at least 30 reps in a way that will ensure that you make progress with your overhead press towards the benchmark over time. The fixed multiple strategy for the 30 rep rule means that there are at least 6 different ways that you can approach your 30 reps. We have 1 set of 30. You can do 2 sets of 15, 3 sets of 10. We have 5 sets of 6, 6 sets of 5, and we have 10 sets of 3. Now, if you want to get your 30 reps done as quickly as possible, you can pick a very light load, allowing you to do at least 30 reps in a row, which means the upside is you'll do only 1 set and it will only take you 2 minutes. But the focus here is more on endurance. On the other side of the spectrum, you can focus more on strength, a load that will only allow you to do 3 reps at a time. So it's pretty much a 3 repetition maximum. This is going to be focused more on strength. However, this is going to take you longer than 20 minutes. Now, regardless of which multiple you focus on, just remember to write down your reps and your sets so that you can try to improve upon that exact rep scheme structure for the next session. Lastly, and another strategy that I like but only applies to the weightlifting complexes is what I call the 7-set test, which means for your very first set, you're going to do 10 reps as a warm-up on a 12 to 12 repetition maximum weight, followed by a set of 5, 5, 3, 3, 3, and for your very last set, you're going to attempt a new 1 repetition maximum score. Finally, for those of you seeking an alternative to the overhead press, either because you don't have access to a weightlifting platform or you just want to do the exact same routine, but you want to replace the overhead press with machines, you can do so by focusing on either the shoulder press or the chest press. Just keep in mind, however, if you do opt for the shoulder press or the chest press instead of the barbell overhead press, you also need to substitute the press hold with the same machine. For example, here I am doing a 60-second press hold on the chest press machine. I will select a load that would allow me to do at least 45 to about 60 seconds, and I'll hold it there for as long as I can, accumulating my total 60 seconds. I will then directly after that do my 30 chest press reps according to the 30 rep rule. So in summary, the press complex is the supine-trap, followed by the seated-flexion or the butcher's block, the McGill Big 3, my 60-second press hold, and finally 30 overhead presses with a barbell or on machines using a progression or a load that will allow me to make the most progress in the shortest period of time.